I'm actually going to introduce the next session and provide an overview on why we're looking at elimination. And what we saw from the video, if you looked at those numbers, it was quite extraordinary. What's been achieved in such a short time. Joy gave us two quotes. I want to give you a third quote from Mandela. Everything seems impossible until it's done. What we've seen from MMV is that it's done. But also taking the point that Joy made about partnerships, MMV is a partnership, and I guess we're all part of that. So it's not what MMV has done, it's what you have done, and we have done, and all our collaborators have done collectively. Before that, it was impossible. And I want us to retain that thought as we move forward, because we're going to move into a session now where we're looking at challenges. Challenges to elimination. What are they? And hopefully we can provoke some discussion towards the end of that, which will begin to see how we can overcome it, which will come from us collectively. So I'd like us to move forward, if I can figure this out. There we go. What are we talking about elimination? What do we have to do to eliminate? Well, we want to save lives, 11 million lives, but this isn't by 2030. Thinking beyond 2030, because one of the speakers is going to speak to the global technical strategy till 2030. Think beyond that. Think at some date, maybe 10 years beyond that, when we might have saved 11 million lives who would have died from malaria and averted 4 billion cases. What does that do when you avert cases of malaria? How does malaria impact an economy? How have we seen this? This has been actually very poorly measured in the past. We don't have good numbers, but some modeling has been done. We could actually generate $2 trillion worth of savings in the world in the next 25 years or so in economic impact just by averting cases of malaria. That's extraordinary. How do we derive that? Well, we figure that somebody becomes less productive, for instance. Work was done years ago, published in The Lancet in 2007, on early childhood development, where they figured that 50% of cognitive deficiencies in young children were caused by two deficits, or two problems. One was iodine deficiency, and the other was iron deficiency anemia. 50%. So if you take anemia, 25% of all cognitive deficiency, according to that study, how much of that was caused at that time by malaria in the mother during pregnancy or in the very early years of life? So when a child enters school at the age of 5, 6, 7, only 20% of children with cognitive deficiency entering school actually catch up. That came from that longitudinal study published in The Lancet in January the 19th, 2007, if you want to look it up. And so this tells us something. Some issues are not reversible, no matter how clever our scientists are and how good the medicine is. We have to prevent it. How do we do that? That is just one reason when you calculate productivity and economic impact, you calculate What's the impact been if so many children who've had malaria can never be fully productive in society? No matter how good the schools, how good the teachers. And I think that's where we have to think. And we don't take that. Generally, none of us in this room, nor me, will take that into consideration every day. But this is the broader impact of what we're trying to do. What's been achieved has been phenomenal. We need to move forward. Oh, by the way, if you look at the target in the center, to achieve this $2 trillion worth of savings over the next 25 years, we only have to spend $110 billion. That's actually a good return on investment of 19 to 1 overall. And I'll show you what I mean by return on investment in a moment. That's the return on investment. So the more lives you save, the bigger the return on investment. So it's an average. Okay? I deliberately show this so that any statisticians in the room can begin to poke holes in it and challenge me. Please do. Because we need discussions around this and we need to get this right. This is all coming from modeling, and we know how good and how bad models are. The same models are good and bad. They give us a false sense of accuracy often. So progressively over time, I've got 2040 there. This comes from a publication that came out a couple of years ago, authored by Bill Gates and Ray Chambers, who's my boss, called From Aspiration to Action. And this looks at what's the likely rate of elimination over time. And they, based on the modeling that they did, they looked at this. So the lighter ones is the ones that are going to eliminate pretty quickly, the light blue ones, and then it goes progressively darker. And you see those that will eliminate the darkest red by 2040. But there's a problem with that, which is the one I'm going to leave you with before introducing the next speaker. And that problem is this. Even though, so if you look at the left hand, right, these are the numbers of countries with malaria. So in 2015, it was around 100. The right-hand column is as you get rid of malaria, so the red, and you see it's very low at the beginning, it's the cost per country of eliminating. The last country, when there are very few cases left, it's going to cost around $700 million for that country to eliminate malaria. So the last thing you want to be is the last country eliminating malaria. Think about that for this region. Think about where different countries are in the elimination process. Think about where the burden is today. And you don't want that country to have the burden of also being the last country, because it's very unlikely, when malaria is not such a public health problem and you're dealing with the paradox of developmental success in health, in public health, the more successful you are, the less likely you are to get financial support and so on from the state. How is a country going to manage to generate the level of revenues? And that will require concerted effort to help the last countries as they get towards there. At the moment, we're elsewhere, and we'll show that later. This is not a parity, so you can't say it's going to cost the same. The actual overall cost declines, but it's the cost per country that goes up over time, and as they reduce cases. I'd now like to introduce the next speaker. We've got several speakers, but the next one has already been introduced, Dr. Kesetebehan Nasu, former Minister of Health of Ethiopia. Before that, a researcher. Right now, the CEO of Rollback Malaria, and really eager to look at how we can generate the kind of thinking and forward thinking and financing for moving forward on malaria, moving forward on the agenda at a pace that will get us to the 90% reduction by 2030 and beyond. He's a medical doctor. He's a public health specialist, but also something very specific, and I hope you don't mind me mentioning this, Dr. Kasete, is he was often a lone voice in the cabinet in Ethiopia, questioning the kind of investments in infrastructure when there need to be balanced investments in social sectors as well. So we have here somebody who knows the business of government, who knows the position of the social sector, the value of health to productivity and to life.